Thank you for joining us for this brief webinar on INTCAS, a fresh approach to international recruitment and enrollment management. I am Cheryl Darrett-Boychuk, U.S. Director of Institutional Relations at INTCAS, which stands for Intelligent Communities Around Students. I've been in the field for more than 20 years, and INTCAS offers the most forward-thinking, cost-effective model that I've seen. Just to give you a little background, INTCAS originally began in London about 6 years ago, partly in response to the United Kingdom's decision to tighten their immigration policy. The team recognized gross inefficiencies in a very fragmented market, so we carefully constructed intelligent digital communities around those students to boost transparency throughout the process, ultimately helping education institutions attract, recruit, and manage international students in a safe, compliant, and cost-effective way. Now, I know you all are kings and queens of multitasking, so you may also want to hop over to our YouTube channel to review our user videos. One of my favorite videos in our channel is called the Trump Trifecta, which details how INTCAS is really well positioned to advance global student mobility in this uncertain political climate. We'll talk a little bit more about our funds verification, due diligence, and escrow services, as I wanted to frame the webinar based on current events. Political pendulum swings can be painful but powerful pushes to new perspectives, and the hashtag #YouAreWelcomeHere campaign is a wonderful place to start moving the conversation in the right direction. But I would say we need to do much more than that to proactively position ourselves in a place where that pendulum is likely to settle. We can find common ground in attracting the most academically qualified and the most financially qualified students and scholars that will advance the U.S. economy while ensuring that those student visa holders do not burden our domestic resources. The fact is, we can do a better job in international admissions with deeper due diligence, more robust funds verification, and even establishing escrow accounts in some higher risk jurisdictions. Now, a second significant trend where INTCAS finds itself at the leading edge in international enrollment management, the rise in stealth applicants. These are students who conduct their research about their study abroad destination without identifying themselves to those institutions before applying. They never even enter the proverbial enrollment funnel before the point of application. So earlier this year, Ruffalo Noel Levitz released a report detailing 5 enrollment challenges for 2017, and one of them dealt with these stealth applicants. Obviously, the statistic that pops out at me is the 69% of international students who fall into this category. I'd say this trend reflects an abbreviated sales cycle from the point the student expresses interest to when they're ready to apply. A few years ago, colleges and universities really had to work to nurture those leads, and the prospective students seemed to really enjoy engaging in that conversation. Now, however, we're finding that many students simply seek the most efficient way to apply to the campus they've already chosen. And of course, this trend applies at the campus level, but it also extends to other recruitment avenues such as third-party lead generators or even fair organizers around the world, who of course measure their success based on feeding students who actually enroll in the colleges and universities that they promote. And INTCAS provides the technological solution for that particular challenge. One of the primary differences of INTCAS is that we guide the student through their whole education journey. Now, because we're cloud-based, there are no expensive software programs to install. You just access the data by logging into our system, of course with appropriate permissions. It is a sophisticated platform that gets pretty granular in terms of addressing the different components of the admissions cycle. What's been most interesting is after our colleagues become familiar with the platform, they ask if they can direct all of their inquiries from a number of different sources through their INTCAS showcase so that those admissions counselors focus on applicants most likely to enroll. In essence, we take those initial inquiries at the widest part of the enrollment funnel and filter them into high-quality applications, improving the efficiency and integrity of the process for both students and institutions. So let's begin with the end in mind. From the counselor dashboard, you can manage all of your applications that flow through INTCAS. You can keep track of the stages and status of each application. And at any point in that process, you can always download data from any of the pages within the application cloud in any of three formats: PDF, Excel, or CSV. So with that entire life cycle in mind, let's walk through the student journey piece by piece. We start with our Exploration Cloud, which allows each education institution to highlight their strengths through our registration and onboarding wizard. We work with you to define specific parameters in terms of the academic courses you offer, associated tuition and living expenses, payment points, and timelines. Here's a screenshot of a sample showcase, which of course is customizable with your images, content, and any updates you'd like to share. So how do we generate inquiries for you? The INTCAS model breaks through the noise of reviewing study abroad options. As a parent, how do I deal with this information overload to help my son or daughter make the best decision for him or her? As a marketer, how do I help U.S. campuses attract the attention of families that best fit with that institution? INTCAS fixes the filter failure in two ways, really. We're focusing on the rising middle class, especially in the Asia-Pacific region. Specifically, we're working with wealth managers who encourage families to explore educational opportunities for their children through our ecosystem. What's in it for them? If those wealth managers can provide a deeper level of service to their clients, they win. Everybody wins. And the industry of global financial services is just now waking up to the enormity of the international education market. As you'll see, INTCAS's sophisticated system embeds financial components as well, so engaging with these wealth managers is a natural extension of our platform. Another complementary way INTCAS targets qualified international students is through boarding schools. These students of all different nationalities and backgrounds generally have the means to study abroad, which improves the chance of visa approvals. What's the incentive for boarding school counselors to recommend INTCAS to their students and parents? Efficiency. INTCAS addresses their pain points of dealing with an awful lot of data scattered in any number of ways. So the guidance counselors encourage parents to register with INTCAS to make it easier for them to keep track of the hundreds of students they need to monitor on their journey. All the academic transcripts, letters of recommendation, extracurricular activities, along with their corresponding deadlines, all in one place within the INTCAS ecosystem. So the student or parent creates their own showcase within INTCAS. My son has joined INTCAS and set up his profile, which is very academically oriented rather than socially oriented. Of course, there are social elements of INTCAS. William can follow the international admissions counselors at the institutions that he's interested in. He can also connect with his parent in this platform that addresses his academic pursuits primarily and not necessarily his social pursuits. He can upload his education qualifications as well as any corresponding documents, all in a secure, robust environment. There's also an opportunity to upload work experience, which is not extensive as a 15-year-old, but the point is that he's building a profile that will last a lifetime. The student can search by any number of different options and ultimately build a master application. From the institutional perspective, our sophisticated algorithms ensure that you're notified only of complete and qualified applications to your institution specifically. Now, around this application stage, you can conduct admissions interviews within the INTCAS ecosystem, so you can informally gauge the applicant's English proficiency or assess the overall fit for your institution through a real-time conversation. One advantage of the INTCAS platform, when compared to Skype, for example, is that those interviews are archived and accessible all in one place. Here you may also request a funds verification report to satisfy the sufficient funds requirement. Our verification cloud enables applicants or their sponsors to demonstrate financial capacity by providing a digital snapshot of their liquid funds within their existing bank accounts. Our network consists of more than 4,500 banks, some of the most popular ones in the world. The verification cloud is very appropriate for applicants from relatively low-risk jurisdictions, for those students who just need to satisfy the requirement quickly and easily. Now, during the registration process, we specify which currency you'd like all monetary values converted to. In this case, we have a U.S. student applying to a UK university, so the host currency is in British pounds. When the student is ready to add a bank account, he clicks Add New. It's a very simple interface. The student or sponsor finds his or her bank. If their bank is not part of our network of 4,500 banks, then the student may revert back to the institution's policies for satisfying that requirement. The user will be presented with an interface very similar to what they see when logging into their bank's own online portal. For HSBC Malaysia, for example, they'll see these input fields just as they would find when logging into their own account at hsbc.com.my. Now, we chose this interface in part to facilitate the fight against fraud. We address this with identity authentication. INTCAS employs the most robust security and privacy methods used by the world's leading banks, informed by Know Your Customer and anti-money laundering guidelines. We tap into a secure network used by more than 50 million consumers around the world. This approach serves to authenticate the user's identity, and the user is always in charge of restricting access to their data at any time within INTCAS. Now, if I were to try to access the same bank account twice, the system would alert me. This screenshot shows the second time I tried to access a Bank of America account. This functionality to detect duplicate access has been extremely helpful. There may be a legitimate reason for duplicate access, such as two siblings pinging their parents' account, so we don't automatically disable any profiles. We simply alert both the student and the institution and provide a comment section for the student to explain any irregularities. Any ping of an account typically takes fewer than 3 minutes to complete. So for each account listed and pinged, we show all transactions over the course of the past 30 or 90 days, depending on the bank's policies. So back on the student's dashboard, all account balances are displayed with totals in both the home country currency, in this case the US, as well as the host country currency, in this case the United Kingdom. The grand total appears there in British pounds in the lower left corner. Now, the accounts do not automatically refresh. The admissions counselor may not authorize a refresh. If there happens to be an agent involved, they may not authorize it either. Only the account holder can refresh the account. When they're ready to do it, they have to re-enter their bank credentials. Multiple balance verifications enable qualified students and their parents or sponsors to substantiate their financial capacity over time. INTCAS keeps a historical record each time a student submits their completed profile to their authorized host institution. So the admissions counselor can pretty easily see if there's a steady stream of income or if the proverbial red flags pop up for one reason or another. The student submits that funds verification to the host institution, who sees the very same information that the student sees within the counselor's dashboard, so you can act on it accordingly. Along with the funds verification, you may also request that INTCAS runs a due diligence report for you to search about 9 billion records that can detect potential red flags in the student's or sponsor's background. We're using the technology pioneered by the global financial services industry when they run background checks on people who want to open new accounts. And ultimately, we generate a verification certificate for you. Again, all of our services are cloud-based, so you'll be able to access these certificates as well as any data from within the student interface. Of course, you're welcome to download or archive any of the data from students who register through your INTCAS showcase. All data is accessible at any time with any device with appropriate permissions. Now, for some students from mid to high-risk jurisdictions, we'd also recommend that the student's family deposits the first year's tuition and living expenses into an escrow account coordinated through INTCAS through the top financial institutions around the world. INTCAS is regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority and subjected to rigorous oversight. We're finding in some countries like China, escrow accounts are gaining significant momentum as parents are eager to elevate their son or daughter's visa application. Escrow accounts not only minimize the financial risks of the education institutions, but they also streamline the visa decision-making process. After the student accepts your offer, you can trigger our platform to send the student an invoice based on information provided in the onboarding process. So this sample invoice is for a student who decided to use our escrow function. Our platform is very transparent, distinguishing specific costs such as the £33,000 tuition fee, the application fee, as well as the maintenance fees, otherwise known as living expenses. So the total amount in escrow would be £42,430. Of course, all of these British references will convert over to the US for students inbound to the States. The disbursements may be customized. We've found, for example, that parents or guardians of younger students appreciate our option to release funds periodically into the student's bank account rather than in one lump sum. So back to our Metro map. At this stage, immigration support becomes important for the student to complete the application accurately and prepare for the interview at the consular's office. This is where our on-ground support centers come in very handy in these major metropolitan areas around the world, blending our deep technological foundation with that face-to-face component. We've partnered with some of the most respected names in the business, including Fragamans, which is one of the world's largest firms dedicated solely to immigration issues. Now, student applicants generally absorb the cost of any guidance at our immigration support centers, which may vary from $200 to $400 depending on the depth of service. Our support centers can run through a pre-departure checklist to ensure a defect-free application, which ultimately improves the visa approval rate. Then, of course, the student enrolls and learns and grows throughout those college years and graduates to a grateful alumni. So the cost for INTCAS services, they're extremely reasonable cost per student acquisition, depending on which particular components you choose throughout the process. Again, our costs are minimal to encourage institutions to maximize efficiency and integrity in the admissions process to ultimately advance global student mobility. We're offering one free annual license for our core products of exploration, admission, and application clouds. Additional licenses are optional. For example, you may want your top cheerleading professor from one of your graduate schools to have access for just $160 per year per user, so he or she can interview prospects and answer questions directly within the INTCAS platform, for example. To start off, we recommend institutions take advantage of our pay-as-you-use model just to get comfortable with our system, so you can gauge volumes for the next recruitment cycle and take advantage of our bundle pricing when appropriate. In some cases, the education institution chooses to volley the cost of service back to the student. That was the case last year in India, for example. A few universities were inundated with Indian applicants and suspected fraud in their financial documentation, but the institution didn't have the time or resources to vet those bank statements properly. So they knew that introducing this digital verification option would lower the number of applications submitted, but increase their yield exponentially. So depending on the institution scenario, you may decide to absorb the cost or volley it back to the student applicant. So if you'd like to proceed, I can send you our one-page institutional marketing agreement, which very simply authorizes us to start promoting your academic programs around the world. Then we can proceed from there based on the services you choose to use within INTCAS. Of course, I'm happy to discuss further in one-on-one conversations. Just reach out to me and we'll schedule a call. Thank you, and we look forward to working with you.